Welcome to Overnight Success, the podcast where we celebrate the incredible journeys of entrepreneurs and visionaries. While there's no such thing as true overnight success, hearing their stories of determination, persistence, and resilience can inspire us all. Presented by Draper University and hosted by Joannou.
I want to quickly mention that none of this is investment advice or financial advice, trading advice, or any sort of advice. And we do not recommend any cryptocurrency or investing in any projects. We're just showcasing the stories of founders.
Great. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for jumping on the call. I'm excited to talk about all things TRES finance, but I do like to go back a little bit, give the audience a little bit of some context as to who the hell I'm talking to, and for those that may not be familiar, and kind of get a little bit about your background. And I go back a little bit, Tal. I start with the question: was there a mother or father that was an entrepreneur?
No. I would say, it's a no. That's Everyone's an entrepreneur, right? And in their own way. My dad was a financial advisor. And so I was born in South Africa, and that's where I grew up. And then when we moved to Israel, my dad used to go every couple of weeks to South Africa for work. And at a certain point, he left the company with his supervisor, and they started investing on their own. And since then, he's been kind of independent. So I'm not sure that's exactly an entrepreneur, as he didn't create a business, but he did kind of manage himself, which is some kind of entrepreneurship, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I always just kind of like hearing a little bit of the background. And so South Africa, was there, can you remember a time when the second question I always ask is just about if you can kind of pinpoint the time you kind of caught the entrepreneurial bug. Was there like a, mowing lawns or a baseball card selling incident? I'm always just kind of curious as to that born or made kind of argument.
Yeah. I would say the first time I really felt an entrepreneur, and when I didn't know how to define an entrepreneur, but I would say first time I felt that I created something out of nothing was actually when I was in Israel. So your audience should know that in Israel, Scouts, like the Boy Scouts, is a thing. It's like the place you go to after school, boys and girls together. And it's like this youth movement that is very mainstream in Israel. And part of the summer camp is building some kind of structure made out of wood and ropes. And I'm talking about huge structures, like 2-3 ton in terms of weight. And you have a team of 50 people building it with you. And you go through about 2 months of planning it. And then execution is about 3-4 days. And when I was in the 10th grade, I was in charge of our structure. And that was like the first time managing 20-30 people, building something and creating. So definitely that was like the first taste. Wasn't that young, maybe. It's like selling lemonade on the street, but it was definitely a lot of responsibility.
So was that like the scoutmaster trying to get his log cabin built, or what?
It's more of,
I was thinking like child labor.
Yeah, I don't know how deep you want to go into this. It's very Israeli, very niche. I'm not going to go into this.
I was just curious. It just sounds like, I remember like hearing one of those kind of obstacle courses that they had, like, survival thing, but it was just like the dude that owned the property was trying to move the airplane or something like that was stuck on his.
No. It's very different. It's very different. It's very different. Yeah.
Amazing. And so when did you end up in Israel? How did that all happen?
I moved when I was 5. That was 1996.
Amazing. And tell me a little bit about like startup scene and stuff there. I mean, I've got a couple of mates over there, and one gave me the book, Startup Nation.
Startup Nation.
Yeah.
There's another one called the chutzpah, which means being cheeky, I would say. And I think it's part of the Israeli culture and core of the entrepreneurship scene. It's crazy what's going on here, right? It's like the highest number of startups per capita in the world, and it's thriving. It's like I can think about my close group of friends. About 30% are founders of startups, and there's a really interesting technology scene here. A lot thanks to the army, as you can imagine. You have a group of kids, right? Practically kids that for 3 years at least learn how to write code and build all kinds of products, which is a very young age, and building kind of or spearheading the cybersecurity scene at that age. And when they finish their service, they have like crazy skills, and that's on the computer side. On the, I would say, on the side of people that don't go to these tech units, like myself, I was in the special forces. I think you learn a lot about yourself and you mature very quickly. And the one thing that I can say that I learned during my army service is that anything is possible. Anything is possible. Like the things that we did during our army service, I mean, I can't say a lot about it, but even if I could, you probably wouldn't believe me. So with that kind of mentality at that kind of young age, you have that chutzpah, you have that cheek to go and say, I'm going to build this software or this product, and I'm going to be a market leader, and I'm going to build a company that's worth billions of dollars and hire hundreds of people, and it's legit. Like, I'm going to do it. And that's it.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I just had this, I just wrote a post maybe 2-3 days ago about mindset, right? And I think it's such a missing ingredient in a lot of startup ecosystems. That was literally the post, right? It's kind of like, hey, I'm talking to governments around the world. We're looking to, at international expansion at the moment. And there's no shortage of technical talent in like lots of countries, right? And you're like, well, what's the difference, right? Like, and I'm like, I'm kind of convinced it's mindset. But yeah,
I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to say something else. One of my friends, when we were in university together, he was on this program with another group of students from a different country in Europe. I'm not going to say which one. And there was a time that he spent in Israel, and then the Israeli team flew out to meet them in their country. And it's a very simple story, but I think it says a lot, right? So they were using this whiteboard to plan something, and they ran out of space. So my friend went to another room and brought in another whiteboard, and they were looking at it like, why would you do that? Like, that whiteboard belongs to the other class. He was like, what do you mean? There's no one in the other class, and we need another whiteboard. So I just went and got it, and we can finish with it, and we can put it back. All good. And they were kind of shocked by the fact that he allowed himself to go and take another class's whiteboard, and for him, it was just made like sense. He didn't even think about it as something that was wrong. And I think that's like part of the mentality of like, I'll do what it takes to make it. And there are some assumptions and some frameworks in the world that they only exist because we believe they exist. But some of them don't really exist, and they are very easy to break. It's just a kind of mental leap that you need to take in order to get through it.
Absolutely. And so in Israel, right, like everyone kind of has to do military duty. Is that right? Or is it?
Yes. So males do about 3 years and females do 2 years. And then depending on what unit you go to, which unit you go to, you might need to sign ahead of time a few years. So when I got recruited, I had to sign an extra 2 years on the get-go, so 5 years in total. And I said another year for some reasons, yeah.
So I guess where I wanted to go was like, so do you think that kind of the discipline and maybe that military experience that you've had have been kind of, I imagine it's been super helpful for your entrepreneur journey?
I think that, I mean, besides meeting my co-founder,
Well, yeah, that helpful too.
that's for sure. As I said, I think it's the mentality that you can do some really crazy things that maybe other people could imagine that they can do.
Very cool. And so on to kind of like, I just gonna go through your bio here a little bit, right? And so
Sure.
you jump around. There's like venture capital. There's starting companies. You tell me where you want to start. You're managing like head of growth. I'm guessing you had an exit here at one point because then you're on a bunch of boards. So what kind of
Yeah.
like, how do you end up in finance land? I guess I'll start there.
So during my time in university, I flew out to USC in Los Angeles, and I spent 6 months there on an exchange program. And then when I got back to Israel, I had that 6 months gap, right? Because I had like 3 semesters in a row and then a break. And in Israel, there's no such thing as an unpaid internship. Okay, it's illegal. And while I was planning on coming back to Israel, all my friends from the exchange program were scoring these amazing internships at Bain and McKinsey and startups, investment banking. And I'm like, I'm not less talented than these people, and they are getting all these amazing jobs. What am I going to do for the next 4 to 6 months at home? I'm going to just like sit and not do anything? No ways. So I decided to be proactive, and I reached out to a bunch of companies, and then I started learning about venture capital. I was like, this is actually a very interesting place to be in. I'm a generalist, so that just felt like the right place to be. I started reaching out to a bunch of VCs. By the way, I sent, I think, over 100 DMs on LinkedIn to different VCs here in Israel. None of them got back to me except for one, the one I actually ended up working for. But the other 99 people that I met later on, and when they did answer me after this or worked in VC, they used to see this message from like a year ago. And I always told them like, can you see that message? You never answered me. Remember that? So I finally started to hear any conversation. Anyway, when it comes to Israel, it's a lot about networking and who you know. And the person who ended up answering my message was also an ex-South African here in Israel that served in the same unit. Yeah. So he kind of knew where I'm coming from and the values and what I've done. And he brought me in to like work for them for 2-3 months. And the idea was to actually work for that VC F2 venture capital for about 2-3 months and then leave and go back to studying and joining this really well-known entrepreneurship program in the university I was studying at. And when time came, I decided to actually stay on. And from 2-3 months, it became 4 years. So I did a bunch of roles. I was an associate, a principal, also led the in-house accelerator called The Junction for about a year and a half. And I ran 3 waves, as we used to call them. So it was a lot of luck and being proactive. You know, luck, you make your own luck, as they say. I had no background in finance. And I don't think venture capital is a lot about finance. It's more about how fast you can learn, how curious you are, how hard you're willing to work and push forward and be proactive. And those are things that I think that I had at the time and I still have. Like even today at TRES, I lead all the sales. Like there's no other person on the sales team except for me. And we've been able to reach from 0 to $1 million in ARR based on founder-led sales. So I still have that like passion of being out there, pushing forward, creating opportunities, and also closing them.
Yeah, I mean, imagine just that experience alone, right? So you learn about venture capital, all the ops and everything that's kind of associated with running an accelerator, plus you probably teaching half the content, so you got to learn all the material, get really deep into like there's a big difference between reading lean startup and being able to like run proper workshops and stuff, right? So I imagine this was like a massive learning curve that those few years along.
It was also that, and also the fact that you were able to witness companies that are doing well and that are failing and see firsthand why, what happened, what mistakes were made, and how they got from A to B. In addition, if you look at my bio, you see that I was head of growth at a startup. So that came also again from inside the VC. I told the guys, listen, I feel like I'm working with all these companies, I'm sitting on boards, but I've never really done anything hands-on. And taking the concept of an exchange program, I actually spent about 6 months at one of our portfolio companies doing hands-on work, and at the same time spending about 20 to 30% of my time back at F2, at the VC. So that was kind of me pushing forward and saying, I have to feel, I have to touch, I have to be part of a startup to be a better investor moving forward.
Absolutely. And yeah, you're quite right. And it's all those kind of conversations and hearing the pitches and trying to give the advice and all that as well. Is that when you setting aside the growth role that you become interested in, hey, I really want to be on the other side of the table and I want to start my own company?
Yes, I think that was like where my appetite started, right? Like I saw being an investor is great. It's the best job ever, by the way. Like work-life balance, prestige, compensation. You meet a bunch of really smart people. You're always on the kind of buying side, so everyone's trying to sell to you. It's a great place to be. But leading growth at a startup is not close to being a founder and starting something from zero. And I'm starting thinking about where I want to be and what I want to be. And this, I don't know how this sounds, but I'm going to say it anyway. I want to be the best in the world in what I do. I want to be the best in the world. Okay, I'm competitive and I want to win, and I want to be the best in the world in what I do. And I thought that in order to be an investor, I could not do that without being a founder.
Yeah.
And today, as a founder, I can say I don't even want to go back being an investor.
Yeah.
Because this is where the real deal is actually happening. And this is where you can actually create and build and be part of something that's much larger than just you as an individual. But still the mentality of being the best in the world sticks with me, and I hope it also influences the team at TRES that we want to be a market leader in what we do.
And what do you think it is, right? Like, I'm just curious, like, so is it like kind of the chaos of it all? Is it that kind of you're, applying the growth kind of stuff to, and I mean, it's not without its like difficulties, right? So I'm curious as to what gets you pumped up about being the founder.
Yeah, you know that during the first 6 months of building TRES, I used to meet former colleagues from the VC ecosystem. I used to say, wow, I can't believe you moved from being an investor to being a founder. How does it feel? And I always used to answer, it's the best and worst thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
Okay. It always goes hand in hand. Okay. And the cliche of the highs are highs, the lows are lows, it's exactly that. But something about those highs is addictive. Okay.
Yeah.
One of the best things of being a founder, like as part of like the sales role, is getting that alert on your phone of like a DocuSign that just got completed. It is an adrenaline rush. It's like the best thing in the world.
Got
Okay.
it. Got it.
So there's something about it. And I also say building your team and seeing them operate and the product kind of gaining depth and traction and seeing real users working on what you've built and willing to pay a lot of money for it. It's like, okay, this is actually something that is bringing some kind of value to people. And okay, let's grow it bigger. Let's do it even better. Let's keep pushing forward. And there's like, maybe I've been looking for it since I finished my service. So in the army, you like, at least in my unit, you're a team of a certain amount of people and you work very close together until you become kind of family. Now, I don't believe in like having a workspace being a family, but it's more of like being a team. Okay. And you become very close to your teammates. And that's something maybe I've been missing for the past couple of years in like other industries. And now having my team and leading the team to success is something that I really, really like doing.
Got it. And what are some of like the mistakes, I suppose, that that you've made, even though you knew you shouldn't have, right? Because it's like, it's interesting to me, like, because I've been on the venture building side, I've done the growth bit myself, I've been the founder, but somehow you still kind of fall in love with your own product a bit here, and you're still like, is there some things that you've like maybe you drop the kind of the theory or whatever because you just like you have to be the believer? I'm just curious as to where like learnings from a founder versus like kind of a theorist, I suppose.
Yeah, it's difficult to say because I think that we are, as we speak, we are making a bunch of mistakes that I'll only learn about later on. And the fact is that I think that when we actually try to make mistakes really quickly so we can fix quickly, I would say like there was some kind of hiring that I made that was trying to compensate on something that wasn't working. And the theory was like, don't do it. And I was like, I really feel that I don't know what else I can do. Okay. So I'm just going to try to throw money and people at the problem as like a last resort. And it was a huge mistake. Okay. And then that hiring didn't work out really quickly. We understood it's not working out. And the answer was actually patience.
Yeah.
It's like you need time sometimes for things to work out. You can't expect to act and then see a result straight away. Okay. So even if I said earlier, like we want to make a mistake fast, it takes time to actually understand that it was a mistake. And on the other side, sometimes you do things correctly. Okay, you're actually doing the right thing. You just have to believe and be a bit more patient and let it actually roll out and then see. Okay. And I am like, if you talk to our customers or partners or team members, I'm so responsive anytime. Email, Slack, WhatsApp. It just shows that I respond really quickly. And if things are a bit slow, it's something I'm also learning as a founder. I have to be a bit more patient. I have to let the process start working and moving. I'll give you another example. Okay, let's talk about product. Okay,
Yeah.
you'll roll out a feature that all your customers have been asking for. Okay, and for the first 30 days, no one is using the feature, and you're saying, what have we done? The features, we didn't build it correctly. It wasn't the right thing that we did. We should change it. Okay. What is actually happening behind the scenes? Okay. You aren't the center of the world. Your users are using your system and probably 20 other softwares, and they have their personal life and they have a bunch of things happening. Okay. The fact that you released the feature they were asking for doesn't mean that tomorrow they will wake up and start using the feature. Okay. They are still getting used to your system and onboarding to your system, especially if they signed 2 or 3 months ago. You have to give them time to start working on the basics of the product and then discover the feature and only then start seeing how they interact with it. Okay. If it's 6 months now, you see them click on the feature and not use it, then start questioning it. Okay. Or maybe there's something about the marketing that didn't work, but you have to show some kind of patience and be empathetic to your users also, and not expect them to align with your expectations of how they should use the feature.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice, right? The customers aren't always on our timeline, right? And so,
100%.
and it's kind of like, particularly, B2B, right? Where startups, we're in a rush, we've got to pay people or whatever, right? Where we're like, and sometimes, then I was like, because, predominantly my roles in sales and partnerships and stuff, right? Is like, and you get the pressure from up above or whatever, but you're just like, hey, like if I call them too many times, they're just going to get pissed off and I've lost the deal because I haven't worked. I got to, like, if they ask for some, I'm as quick as can be, right? Because it's like I'm gonna match their pace. But if they tell me they need
Exactly.
a week or whatever, then you got to be prepared to not like harass them 3 times in between because they got stakeholders to talk to, whoever, right? Like, and so
Yeah.
I think that's really great advice for founders, is just kind of sometimes having patience. I talk about in my sales decks, presentations, when I do it, I say letting it breathe is how I kind of is letting the term.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so
But it's so difficult. It's so
yeah,
difficult to get to.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Especially when you're like this close to closing someone, right? Because
Yeah.
it's you want to try and push it along, right, or whatever. Okay, so moving on to, like, specifically to Trace Finance. Am I saying it right? I'm not screwing it up.
TRES, yes, correct.
Trace. And where did this come from? What was it? Kind of something you saw in the market? How did it kind of get started?
Yeah. So as a VC, we were an early stage, seed stage venture capital firm based in Tel Aviv, and we were journalists. Okay, so we're investing in cybersecurity and DevOps and fintech and insurtech, drones, you name it. Okay, and 2018, I led our first blockchain related investment. Okay, that kind of opened up the door to the blockchain space, and then we had the winter, right, around 2019, and the GPs at the fund said like, okay, like let's not invest in these kind of projects anymore. And then 2021, we had like the DeFi summer and NFTs started picking up and things became interesting. And I was kind of pulled into that ecosystem again. And we started making more investments in the space. And on my side, we saw that for some of our portfolio companies and in general, it's very difficult to report on what's actually happening financially. Okay. And my co-founder at the time was also involved in all kinds of IDOs and smart contracts. And he saw that for him to get paid or for the organization to manage their financials, they were sending each other screenshots from Etherscan, and it was very difficult to manage. Okay. And we started thinking about, because both of us come from more of like a B2B enterprise domain, and we know data, we know scale, we know enterprise, we understood that this is more of a data and infra problem and challenge rather than a financial challenge. Okay. First of all, we have to solve the data challenge and only then build the application on top of it. So we started thinking about what this should look like. And we talked to a bunch of called beta customers, design partners, to understand what the pains really are. And very quickly we understood that there's a real pain and companies are willing to pay real money for the product. And I can say as a VC, like I said to myself, this is a product, a solution that I would actually want to invest in as a VC. Okay. Like it checks all my boxes. And that's when we said, okay, let's push forward. Let's go raise money based on the feedback and on the figures that we built. By the way, we didn't raise we didn't even have a deck. We didn't have a presentation. When we talked to investors, we used to have an open conversation, which also as a VC, by the way, I much prefer rather than just seeing a generic presentation like shows me TAM. Okay. Like the TAM is always bullshit slide, in my opinion, at least. The VC should conduct his own research on the size of the market and not believe any kind of slide. But anyway, what we did is we created a Figma that shows the flows and what the product should look like and really show and explain the investors how this will be serving our user and customer base. And very quickly we were able to raise funds and start building the team and the product that we envisioned.
Got it. And just like from a kind of a tactical standpoint, right? And for the entrepreneurs that are listening, how did you go through that kind of I guess that feedback loop that you had with those kind of beta customers? I think you referred to. Are you centralizing them in a Telegram or in a WhatsApp, or you just kind of meeting them quite regularly? How are you having those conversations and like then keeping them engaged?
Yeah, so there were like 2 or 3 tiers of design partners. You had like the tier 1, super friendly. You can send them messages whenever you want, you can on the Zoom whatever you want, like very in the details. Then you had the tier 2. So those are the ones that like once in a while you would send over a screenshot or maybe some kind of video asking them what they think. And then the third tier were just ones that you would send updates and just see how they react. So we used to kind of balance it out and say, okay, this is something we should actually send to tier 3. This is like tier 1 and play around with it. It's probably one of the biggest challenges. How do you manage the whole discovery process? Okay. One of the things that I've learned from my co-founder, Elon, so this is like his second time. He was a CTO and co-founder of a cybersecurity company. He used to say, don't listen to the customers. They do not know what they want.
Yep.
Okay, which is like the exact opposite of what you usually hear. So what he's actually saying is like, listen to an extent, but don't take them exact like word for word exactly what they are saying, because they can send you on these journeys to like go build out this feature that isn't exactly what they were looking for. Let's try and understand the concept of what they are doing, and then let's build the product that we feel is the right thing to do, because many times they don't really know what the best thing is for them. And to this day, that is a concept that we use in the product organization.
And then how, like, so exactly why I asked, right? Because I'm always just curious how people kind of do this stuff. And the second bit will be like, how do you said, you had these early conversations and you're talking about we knew the pain point was there. We knew people were going to pay for it. I'm always curious how people kind of figure out, the pricing. Is they just throw like a number up and then kind of look up and be like, see if they nod,
For the
right?
pricing,
Yeah. Or is it just a bunch of landing pages that you're throwing at people? I'm just because you don't really have that kind of that luxury
yeah.
super early, right?
So the easiest thing we did was we just looked at our competitors and saw how much they are charging.
Yep. Yep.
That was the only way. By the way, the whole pricing methodology at TRES has changed completely in the past 6 months.
Yep.
Okay, every month it changes. Okay, because new features are being added, new customers and market segments are being revealed, new concepts are being introduced to the ecosystem. So where we were, like, times I look like we just hired a part-time CFO, and we're going over all our customer order forms, and it's amazing to see our first customer and last customer and compare the pricing and the language even used. I'm ashamed of our first 5 customers and the way we drafted out those agreements. It looks totally different today, but it also makes sense. For, like, at the time, you have to be scrappy. You have to kind of go with the flow. You have to get a feel of what you can do. Look at your competitors. Throw out some numbers. Maybe have some kind of trusted advisor you can roll some numbers out with and see how it feels. And also think about the future. Okay, you have to start with some kind of model that is also sustainable over time. Because when you take that initial pricing model, and if you want to completely flip it moving forward, it might be difficult with existing customers. Okay, so and also don't build something that doesn't make sense. Like, don't sell a product that should be worth $20K annual for $500 annual, right?
Yep.
Because that means nothing then. It
Yep.
doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a conversation I have with founders all the time where they're just like, you haven't priced it high enough, and then it's kind of like perception of quality, particularly B2B. It's like, what are you
But,
trying to
but
tell me?
so one advice I have, and we've done this a few times, is offer a first year discount or 6-month discount. So say, this is the pricing that I'm aiming for. Understanding my product isn't complete. This is the product roadmap. For the first year, or for the first 6 months, I'm going to give you a 90% discount, an 80% discount. Okay, but something that it anchors the customer to understand what the real pricing should be, and then you also give a really nice discount, which means a lot to them. Okay, so you're coming towards them, right? It's some kind of a gesture, and you saying to them, I know that this isn't the exact value you were looking for, but it's getting there. And then as time goes by and as the product advances and becomes more mature, that's when the pricing moves closer to the real pricing you were initially aiming for.
That's amazing. And yeah, I love that, because also could give you like, well, we fucked it up because we're still in beta, like, oh, like, that's why it's
Exactly.
90% off, guys. Like, we're still working on it.
Exactly.
And so I'd love to just, specifically, you've got your, from what I can, gather, you've got these kind of web 2.5, whatever. I don't know. People call it, don't crucify me.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. But the zero integration, the stuff that I want to see, that's not going anywhere in the short term anyway, right? So you've got these kind of, how are you managing, I guess, your roadmap versus what customers are asking for is kind of, I guess that's the first question.
Yeah. There are 2 product roadmaps that as a company you work on simultaneously. Okay. You have the vision roadmap, right? Where you imagine the product should be and you start building towards that. Then you have the customer roadmap. So how do you answer customer needs immediately, and what kind of requests are coming in that should be implemented in terms of priority? Okay. And these 2 product roadmaps need to live together because you are limited on resources. Okay. So you're always having this short-term kind of roadmap that is changing on a daily basis, and this long-term roadmap that you always need to keep the eye on the ball and where you want to go. Okay. And if you want to be a real master, then you see what short-term customer requests are actually serving the long-term.
Yeah.
Okay, and how you kind of find those mutual connections. It's very difficult. Okay,
Yeah.
like in theory, what I just said sounds like, oh, okay, this means this, then great. It's very difficult to micro segment different features and fixes and bugs and data requests, and prioritize them in terms of what's important and what's urgent. Okay, for us, it's kind of gas and brakes. That's our concept. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll have like a sprint and we'll push forward very fast on new features, and then we'll brake and stabilize. Okay, and then push fast and brake and stabilize. Okay, which is very different. I think that's kind of a definition of a startup, right? As an enterprise, you work very like smoothly, or not smoothly, but like slowly and stable. Okay, as a startup, we like go, stop, fix, stabilize, and then go. So that's how we are working today.
Yeah, I love it. It's also like a common theme, when I'm talking to founders in this kind of B2B environment. I'm just like, hey, be mindful that you're not turning into an agency. That's kind of how I try and define it, where it's like you want and I think that is being cognizant of what your roadmap is and what your vision is, because otherwise, particularly if they're big, important clients for you, there is the ability to kind of just go over here and build what they want, and it's kind of not where you're headed, and you become kind of like an agency. I don't know how else to define it. So I'm like,
So I'm going to say something about the agency thing.
Go ahead.
We really like the concept of service provider. Okay. Why am I saying this? Some features you want to beta test. Okay. And the way to do it is to not write code. Okay. So one of the concepts internally is, if there's a new feature, how can we serve the need for the customer manually as a service provider to really understand how they interact with what we are building. And only after we are completely sure that we understand the use case and the pain point, and that this feature is applicable for a bunch of different customers, only then we will move into the design review and actually building it or coding it. Okay. Nice. But it's okay to be some kind of service provider as part of the company, to learn and do things manually and touch with your hands before you automate different things. On the other hand, you should be careful not to become a complete service provider, which means very heavy stack that is done manually for a very specific customer, with an understanding that this doesn't, it will never integrate to the long-term product vision that I described earlier. And it's always going to be a short-term kind of answer, but it will probably drag on to the long term, if that makes sense. It might be a bit confusing, but I hope.
No, it was perfectly fine. I think it's kind of, what is pretty much what I was saying too, right? It's like, but it's only that you kind of define that roadmap and that vision that you've got that you realize when you're kind of going too off track. I love the idea of concept of kind of manually, building it out and then making sure they will even freaking use it before you even kind of, get to do all the most of the work. Anyway, I'm mindful of your time. How do you then, just curious as to what's happening now in your world with, like, given the market and all the craziness that's happening, is that affecting, user acquisition, kind of your growth rates? Is it something that you kind of you just continue to build with? Like, how are you balancing what's happening in the real world with what you're doing and your vision?
I think that it will take another 6 months for me to give you a clear answer. With the most recent events with Coinbase and Binance in the US. I would say bottom line is digital assets are here to stay, too big to fail. And the US will not decide if it's a thing or not. And I think that the future is going to be very interesting when it comes to stable coins and tokenization of assets. And I think that there are always these cycles. And I read a tweet earlier today of a founder who left the digital asset space in 2019 after getting some kind of pressure from family, which is influenced by the media and what people will say. And when it was kind of the rebound and the DeFi summer, he said, I actually missed out on the opportunity to build one of the biggest companies in the industry. And the tweet goes on and says, this is the time to not let go, to keep building, because the companies that are building real value for the ecosystem in 2-3 years or in 12 months, I don't know when things will go back, but there will be another summer. There will be another cycle. We will get closer to real adoption. There will be the next phase of digital assets. Okay. This is real technology. Okay. We receive payments in fiat and in crypto. The differences in terms of fees and speed and transparency are mind blowing. Okay. This is definitely the future of finance. It will not replace TradFi, but it will live beside TradFi and will be a rather large part of the fintech ecosystem. So I'm optimistic, as a founder should be, and I'm also realistic, as a founder should be. So I understand what I need to do as a founder in terms of work very closely with my existing customers, understand where the market is going, make sure my burn doesn't go crazy, make sure my growth is sustainable, and be responsible for my team and for the company that we are trying to build, and being mindful of the current situation. At the same time, not take my eyes off the ball and understand what the larger vision is and where the market is going, and never give up.
Nice. Really nicely said. Tal, thank you so much for joining us. Really loved every minute of the conversation, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, best of luck.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Overnight Success. We hope you enjoyed hearing from our guests and learning about their inspiring journeys. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and share it with your friends. And remember, with hard work and dedication, anything is possible.